Today's topic is the Deaf Space Project, and many of you asked, what do we do about the deaf-blind population? My guest today has a very unique perspective on that issue, and I thought she would be the best person to answer those questions. So, Christine? Ryan, many people assume that deaf-blind means completely deaf and completely blind, and really that's not the case. Deaf-blind can mean a number of things, including close vision, low vision, cataracts, Usher syndrome, vision trauma. Some are born deaf and blind, like Helen Keller, and the list just goes on, and that's not even including the deafness aspect. I have Usher syndrome. It's a genetic condition. I was born deaf, and my vision symptoms developed later in life. Many people have an assumption about tunnel vision, which is what happens to your vision. It decreases and forms this sort of window that you can look out of. And many people think that outside of this window is just blackness, when really it's just an invisible barrier that blocks things like peripheral vision. 3 to 5% of the deaf population in the United States have Usher syndrome. Of my friends, I'd say probably 2 out of 20 have Usher syndrome. Now, I'm part of a large deaf community and a large deaf-blind community. I grew up going to a deaf residential school. I was a deaf foreign exchange student in Germany, and I went to Gallaudet University. All throughout my life growing up, I identified as deaf, capital D, deaf. When my vision decreased, I hit rock bottom. I became frustrated and overwhelmed by the communication that was going on around me. I couldn't keep up. I felt alone and detached from the deaf community. I couldn't identify with being blind. I was deaf. I didn't want to be blind. Then I joined the American Association for the Deaf-Blind, and I realized that there were others like me. I found the connection that I had been missing because there were no role models, no deaf-blind role models growing up. So I made the connection. I found people who had similar experiences that I did, and as I became more involved with the deaf community, I realized that the deaf-blind community was not necessarily on the same page as the deaf community. As the deaf community progressed, the deaf-blind community seemed to be pushed aside and left behind. Was this intentional or not? I don't know. But this had a real impact on the deaf-blind community, and there were frustrations when it came to technology and education and the overall socializing issue and maintaining the connection with the deaf community. Now, I love the deaf community. I grew up in the deaf community. I know ASL, and I appreciate and respect the values of the culture. I understand why the deaf community might want to move ahead without the deaf-blind community, but it's not fair. The main concern is the separation and the detachment that the deaf-blind community feels, and how we should instead try to maintain the connection and the equality amongst the deaf-blind and the deaf community.